Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
A wife leaving for a party heard something from her husband that she didn't want. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy it! After 2 years of dating and almost 10 years of marital bliss, what do I have left? An incredibly expensive house, a mediocre job, a marriage on the rocks, and a group of friends who are always trying to outdo each other. The only bright spot has been our 2 wonderful children, David, who is 8, and Megan, who turns 7 this month. If it weren't for them, I would have left already, but I can't do that to them, not yet, at least. Divorce is not an option. We bought our house at the peak of the market, going deep into debt because we thought if we didn't jump in right away, we'd never be able to afford a house later. A huge mistake. The house is, of course, nice, but we are, as they say, poor owners of expensive houses. If we get divorced, neither of us will be able to afford the payments separately, so I stay in this marriage for the children and to avoid living in the back seat of a car. But how long will this continue? That's my only question. It wasn't always like this. Stress and moving in different directions took their toll. Heather wanted a fairy tale wedding complete with a house and a white picket fence, while I wanted to marry the love of my life and travel the world in my free time. Children have a way of changing these dreams. Heather became pregnant while we were planning a holiday to the south of France. She forgot to take her pills on one of our weekend trips and thought it would be fine since it wasn't her fertile time of the month. She had always been bad at math, and with a baby on the way, our trip to France had to be put on hold. After David was born, she told me that if we wanted another child, we needed to do it right away so they would be close in age and we could be done with diapers and potty training quickly. We didn't expect it to take her longer to get pregnant the second time around. It was fun at first, actually trying to have a baby, but then it just became a mission. With 2 small children in the house, we stopped traveling, and when we did, we needed a trailer to fit everything we thought we might need. Dreams never die, they are simply put aside, knowing that they will appear again later when everything has calmed down. I told myself to cheer up as I completed one mundane task after another. This is not to say that life was boring with 2 children in the house, it just wasn't the kind of entertaining life I sometimes looked for. 8 years later, we were a typical suburban couple. The kids were involved in sports and other activities, and we had a group of friends who were basically just like us, doing their best to live the American dream. But when the 9th year came, my brain woke up and no longer liked what it saw. We barely made the country club dues, and payments on 2 new cars were taking their toll. Our kids always needed something, and our annual salary increases just couldn't keep up. We lived far beyond our means. Heather was a secretary and clerk in a law firm, and I was a middle manager in a plant. Although our jobs were not prestigious, coupled with as much overtime as I could take, they covered our comfortable lifestyle. As for Heather and me, at least we both loved children. My usual outfit was Dockers and a polo, while Heather was always dressed to the nines. As Heather said, she needed to look professional because she was meeting with the firm's clients. My God, she was a clerk, not a lawyer appearing before the Supreme Court. The worst part was that after almost 10 years of marriage, the spark had almost died out. Quarrels over money and everything else poured buckets upon buckets of cold water into our relationship. We were polite to each other and even slept in the same bed, but that was all. We were in it for the kids. At our neighborhood meetings, everyone thought we were that happy couple. I never told anyone that this was not so, but from the looks of other wives, I understood that Heather opened her big mouth about our home life. It didn't really matter except that I didn't want everyone to know what we were doing, even though it wouldn't have changed anything. The only good thing that happened at these meetings was that Heather usually drank too much and wanted to unwind a little. I stopped calling it love a long time ago. Then, the next day, we returned to the normal life of a typical couple. It was disgusting. We've only had a night twice in the last month, and I'm tired of begging. Let me rephrase, I'm tired of begging. My needs were not being met in any way. Damn it, I'm a man, and all men want it every hour on the hour, but according to Heather, this won't happen, well, at least not in her life. At first, she used the children as an excuse, then she was tired, and eventually, she just wasn't in the mood. All this resulted in conflict. After the last meeting with the neighbors, which was at our house, Heather was already drunk by the time everyone left. I put away the basics, and the rest could wait until breakfast on Sunday. I was more than ready to release, but by the time I got upstairs, Heather had already showered and gone to bed. I reluctantly took a shower and went to bed myself. I wasn't in the mood. I was preparing breakfast for the children when she came down to the kitchen. Even with a hot pan of bacon and another with eggs, there was an icy atmosphere in the air. "Sorry about last night," I said. "It wasn't on purpose. I just drank too much." My anger must have flipped a switch in my brain because I became louder. "Now you have to be drunk to have an intimate with me? Oh my heart, I don't need your pathetic handouts." The look on her face was priceless. "You might as well keep them because they're not worth it these days," I said, thinking about the last time when I moved up more than a couple of steps. I'm tired of her arrogant attitude. "Don't worry, I won't touch you anymore, okay? This will be a refreshing change, not having to fight you off every time I pass by." I left, leaving 2 hot pans on the stove. She tried to back off a little that night, but I was still angry and tired of all the excuses. We started arguing again, and she ran out of the room while I went to bed. Well, what I did was turn off the lights, lock our bedroom, and try to sleep, which never happened. I was almost ready to add our marriage to the growing number of divorces, money or not. I think she tried to turn the knob around 2 in the morning, but I wasn't going to let her into the room. She ended up sleeping somewhere else, only God knows where. We only have 3 bedrooms in our house, and they were all occupied, leaving only the sofa in the TV room. It was old and hard as a rock. At 6 o'clock, I got up, showered, got dressed, and finally opened our bedroom. I woke up the kids, got them moving, and headed downstairs. Heather came out of the office and threw lightning at me with her eyes. "Good morning to you too," I said, walking past her. I made a cup of coffee and laid out the kids' breakfast before leaving home. This was the beginning of a new ice age. We didn't talk after that. We exchanged words but did not speak to each other, no kissing, hugging, or other displays of affection. The positions were fixed. When I told her I wasn't going to Carol and Tim's barbecue, she made a scene. "What will I tell them?" "The truth," I said. "That would be new, wouldn't it? But I guess all the wives already know what a heartless idiot I am." I did not back down, and she and the children walked across the road with her jelly in their hands. She came back drunk as usual. "Everyone asked where you were," I told them. "You weren't feeling well, and that was the end of it." "Why didn't you tell them that I'm married to a," she started, but I cut her off. I'm tired of begging her for love. She wasn't in the mood or too drunk to argue. She took a shower, put on one of her regular t-shirts, and got into bed. When I felt her reaching out to me, I moved away. She didn't try anymore, so our new life continued from week to week. When she went out with a couple of friends on Friday night, I was almost glad she was out for the night. But when she returned after midnight, her appearance told me that we now had an even bigger problem. Although I didn't want to believe it, it seemed to me that Heather took our problems to a new level. She didn't say a word to me on Saturday and avoided eye contact. An avalanche was raging inside me, but I was going to force her to speak, which didn't happen. When she came out twice more and returned with the same look, I finally decided to follow through. It was Friday, and she was going out with her friends again. Sue honked at her from the front door, and just as she was about to tell me not to wait for her, I tossed something to her. She caught it, and time stopped. "I just want to make sure you don't bring anything contagious. There's a lot of crap out there, and I don't want my kids getting anything from your lovers." She was dumbfounded, but at this stage, I didn't care what she thought. She started to say something, but I stopped her. "Your lover is probably waiting for you, and you don't want to be late, do you?" I turned and went into the kitchen. When I heard the door close, I had my answer. She returned at 11 o'clock. I wasn't sure if she was drunk, but it didn't matter anymore. I pretended to be asleep, and it took forever for her to finally get into bed. I waited for something, anything, to see if there was even the slightest chance of salvaging what we had, but nothing happened. On Saturday morning, I think she tried several times to say something, but she couldn't. She was shocked when I put on my best suit and was about to go out while she was preparing dinner. I even sprayed a little of my favorite cologne on myself so Heather would notice. With a "don't wait for me," I walked out the door and went to dinner alone. I didn't have a date and didn't know where I was going. I just wanted to show her that she wasn't the only one in demand. I had dinner at Dennis's and then went bowling, something I hadn't done in ages. As expected, I was terrible, barely scoring 100 points in the first game, and by the fourth, my hand and thumb were starting to hurt. I was using muscles I hadn't used in the last 10 years, but I was having fun. I joked with the groups on either side of me and even flirted with a few single ladies. Was this supposed to go further? No, none of them particularly interested me, and I had enough problems to start a novel. I drove around the city for another half hour to avoid returning home before midnight. It didn't surprise me that she was waiting for me. I threw my jacket over my shoulder and walked past her, not paying attention to her presence. Two can play this game. The following Friday, Heather didn't go out, but on Saturday night, I was dressed and out the door by 7 o'clock. I went to see the first part of the new Harry Potter movie, had dinner at Boston Market, and attended a comedy club for their adult show at 10:30. I stopped at a bar for the night. I didn't have to drive around town because it was almost 1 a.m. when I headed home. It didn't surprise me that she was waiting for me. I threw my jacket over my shoulder and walked past her again, not paying attention to her presence. Two can play this game. Are you having fun when I'm not here? Heather asked at breakfast. Yeah, fun. Thanks for asking, I said with a smile. However, that wasn't exactly what she had in mind, but I wasn't going to play her game or get involved in an argument this morning. By this time, the kids were in the kitchen, and everyone was getting ready for our usual Sunday breakfast. Children usually don't notice what happens between adults unless it's loud and doesn't concern them. Since we no longer fought or did anything together, they saw no reason to worry. I wasn't worried either because I had already accepted that my marriage was over and was looking forward to what awaited me in life. I could mark time until the kids were older, but given what she did, I was done with her. The only thing that changed was my attitude, and people at work noticed it. Steve, you've been in such a good mood lately. I'm glad Gloomy Steve is gone, our office secretary Debbie said as I walked in and wished her good morning with a big smile on my face. I no longer looked at the clock at the end of the day because I didn't have to rush home to anyone other than my 2 children. When I took one of the single girls in the office to lunch one day, no one said anything. But when it became a habit over several months, people started talking, not to me, of course, but to everyone else. I'd been preparing for several changes in my life. There's no point in waiting for the other shoe to drop. When Heather returned home late Thursday, the children were already fed and upstairs doing homework. When she walked in and our eyes met, I released my load. Damn, he must be good in bed. I haven't seen you look so satisfied in years. I hope it was worth it. Steve, you have no idea what you're talking about. You think you know everything, but you really don't know a damn thing. Whatever you say, darling, I replied, smiling. By the way, are you coming with me to Ken and Pam's barbecue this Saturday? No way. I'll probably have plans. You don't love our friends anymore. Now all the wives think I'm some kind of, and the guys probably think I'm some kind of weakling because I let you cheat behind my back. So, no, I don't want to accompany you on Saturday. I'm not cheating on you, she shouted back. Well, if you don't get it from me, you'll get it from someone else, and frankly, I don't care anymore. Besides, they will soon no longer be my neighbors. What do you mean? Our house is up for sale starting tomorrow. What? You can't do this without my permission. It won't matter soon anyway. After the divorce, you won't be able to afford the house payments, and I'm definitely not going to pay for the house so you and your new lover can cohabitate at my expense. What scam, our dear? Weren't you listening? I think we can make enough money selling our house to pay off 2 cars and most of our credit cards. That way, we can both start over somewhere else. I've already found a small apartment 3 blocks from work. I can save a lot of money on gas by walking to work. Heather just stood there with her mouth open, not believing what she was hearing. You've completely lost your mind. You know that? You've completely lost your mind. Maybe, but at least I won't have to deal with the heartless anymore. Read my lips, I'm not cheating on you, understand? I do not care anymore. What we had is long gone, and I don't think even divine providence could bring it back. I'm tired of your mood swings, your idiotic games, and living without intimate. I want a normal life with a caring and loving wife, and it could be anyone, just not you. So you can go out and sleep with whoever you want and not have to worry about me because, honestly, you haven't been bothered for the last couple of years. I said what I was thinking and headed to my bedroom. It was still early, but I was completely exhausted. I read the children a story, kissed them, and told them that their mother would soon come to put them to bed. After I brushed my teeth, I undressed and went to bed at 9:30, and to my surprise, fell asleep quickly. The next day, a for sale sign appeared on our lawn. I figured it would be a long weekend, so Friday night I picked up 2 movies the kids might like to watch. Heather will probably be out Friday night, which will give me more than enough time to be alone with the kids. When I arrived at the house, the for sale sign lay broken into pieces by the fence. It didn't matter, it was already on the MLS list, and that's where everyone looks first. Dad, are we really selling the house? Both children asked me. Yes, but don't worry, we can handle it, I replied. See, I told you we were moving, my son David told his little sister Megan. They won't like the changes that are coming, but they have been resilient and will cope. Are you really selling the house, Ken? My neighbor asked me as I was taking the trash cans to the side of the road. Yeah, I caught Heather cheating and I'm divorcing that, I said with a smile on my face. He looked a little taken aback by my frankness, said he was sorry, and walked back to his house. I assumed, knowing his wife Pam, that within an hour the whole neighborhood would know about it. We're not selling the house, Heather shouted as I walked into the kitchen. You can't sell it without my permission, and I won't give it. Then we won't get anything when the house goes to auction. That way, if we sell it, we'll get at least some money. The house is not for sale. As you wish, I said, not going to argue about it. I went upstairs to change clothes. Hearing 2 phone calls, I knew it was going to be a loud evening. I heard Heather yell, Jesus Christ, and then she asked what while I was putting on shorts and a t-shirt. I went downstairs to face the lion in her den. Did you tell Ken and his wife that I was cheating on you and that we were getting a divorce? Have you gone completely crazy? She shouted. Probably for staying so long, I said, but what's the problem? The problem is that now everyone in our area thinks I'm some kind of walking womanizer. That's the problem, she shouted back. At least 2 wives in the area already know you're cheating. What difference does it make if everyone knows it now? Things aren't going as Heather planned. We're not selling the house, and we're not getting divorced. That's final. So I need to cancel the divorce filing for your job tomorrow. One by one, the bricks of our marriage crumbled. Steve, what's wrong with you? Are you sick? You didn't listen to a word I said. I'm not cheating on you, Heather. That's not the case anymore, even though I have proof that you cheated. I didn't, but she didn't know that. Maybe you don't understand. I don't care anymore. I don't want to be married to you anymore. Look, I'm not alleging treason because that doesn't matter in this state. I simply state the reason as irreconcilable differences. Just sign the papers, and we can both start a new life. I'll give you 50% of everything and pay alimony. What else do you need? I don't need a damn divorce, she said, not backing down. Okay, let's try this. I won't be submitting the paperwork for your job as planned, but we'll just hand it to you so you can discuss it with your lawyer. How many times do I need to repeat? I don't need a divorce. We must talk about what we will do with our child and where you will sleep. I wanted to suggest ending her pregnancy, but I knew neither of us would agree to that option. There's always a basement for you too. I'll put a bed there, and you'll be more than comfortable. I won't leave my bedroom. Well, me neither, I replied. I guess that means we'll have to tolerate each other and share. It shouldn't be a problem. I've been living with a roommate for a couple of years now. What's a few more months? I needed to get another pin in. However, we both knew it wouldn't be as smooth as we had hoped. As they say, words are cheap. When I stopped wearing my wedding ring, she stopped wearing hers too. She didn't go out on Fridays anymore, complaining about how she couldn't drink, but now her friends were coming over to our house. I tried to be polite and not say anything, but when they all started looking at me condescendingly, it made me want to puke. So, what did I do? I started going on dates. Are you going on a damn date? Heather shouted as I got dressed. Not really a date, more like dinner. You forgot that you're still married to me, remember? How could I forget? You remind me of this every day with your constant presence. But how much time do we have left? 5 months until you give birth? Her eyes filled with tears, and she ran out of the bedroom. Did I feel bad? Yes and no. If this was my child, I would feel a little bad about the way I treated her. But after the way she treated me all these months, a little retribution was necessary. I had lunch with Nancy. For several months, I was open with her about my situation. I told her that I was married but only in name, and that I was probably getting a divorce but had to wait until the baby was born. She asked how far I wanted to go in our relationship, and I said I would leave it up to her. Dinner was good, but dessert was great. Did I feel bad? Maybe a little, but I'm tired of living the life of a silent monk. I entered the house a little after 1 in the morning. I wanted Heather to know what I had done. Her eyes said it all the next morning as she followed me around the kitchen while I prepared breakfast for everyone. At least she waited until the kids left the room. How could you? At least you could have washed yourself before you went to bed last night. Now I have to wash the bed linens and disinfect the sheets. Don't worry, I was careful. If looks could kill, I'd be dead by now. Well, it looks like we have an open marriage now, so I guess you won't mind if I get some exercise too, she said, trying to look me in the eye. You started it, and I guess you'll finish it. I didn't start this, you did, Heather. I may not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not stupid. I saw that look on your face that first night. Don't try to say it was just a bachelorette party. And let's not forget that Thursday when you came home with a big smile. Like I said, you haven't looked this satisfied with me in ages. So don't act arrogant or like a young innocent bride. You took your heart out of this marriage a long time ago, and your latest actions just drove the final nails into the coffin. So go out and sleep with whoever you want. I don't care. Only if you find someone who wants a pregnant. My words were as full of anger and sarcasm as I could muster. Heather started crying and ran into our bedroom, slamming the door. It looked like the kids and I would be on our own for the rest of the day. We went grocery shopping and bought a few things at Home Depot. I stayed out of the house as long as I could, but probably not long enough, because when we got home, we had Sue. I put everything away, installed a new spark plug in the lawnmower, and was getting ready to mow the lawn when Sue came out to me. You should be ashamed of yourself for the way you're treating Heather. Damn it, she's your wife and pregnant with your baby. Sue, that remains to be seen. Besides, if you, Pam, and Carol hadn't taken her outside and put her under someone, we wouldn't be in this mess. Steve, she didn't go and change, as you so colorfully put it. Then what do you want to call it? It had to be someone good because she kept coming back. I hope he likes doing it with a bump because in a couple of months Heather will look like she has a basketball down there. I had no sympathy for her or anyone else at the moment. Steve, you don't know anything, but you will ruin your marriage. It's already destroyed. I'm just burying it underground, so to speak. She shook her head, gave me a nasty look, and left me alone on the lawn. Dinner was quiet except for the kids talking about the movie we had watched after dinner. This was the 3rd episode of Harry Potter, and although we had seen it in the cinema, they never got tired of it. Heather was nowhere to be seen, so after the movie ended, I got both kids ready for bed, read them a short story each, and turned out the lights with a kiss. Heather was lying in bed reading when I walked in. The kids are waiting for a goodnight kiss, I said, heading to the bathroom. The long shower and other stuff only took me 20 minutes. Heather was waiting for me because when I returned to the bedroom, she put down her book. I was still without anything and reaching for a pair of night shorts when she asked if we could talk. I think we both know where we stand with each other, and it's just a matter of time before we find out whose baby you're really carrying. She was unhappy with the way the conversation had started. I know I haven't been the most loving and caring wife to you for a while, but that wasn't on purpose. Things got so crazy, and I could never catch up with everyone pulling me in a million different directions. For that, I'm sorry. Nonsense. You closed yourself off from me a long time ago. I was there for you, but you had your own agenda, whatever it was. I tried, God knows how much I tried, but in the end, I gave up on you and what was left of our marriage. So now we're just waiting for this to end. Well, what are you going to do when you find out it's really your baby? Well, I guess I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. I was no longer in the mood to talk. As they say, life goes on. It had to go on because bills had to be paid and the kids needed both of us to raise them. Heather tried her best to make our lives normal, but there was nothing normal left. I shocked her when I told her I would go with her to the next party in the area. Aren't you going to make a scene there and humiliate me and the kids? You don't trust me anymore? About the same way you trust me, darling. Nothing changed. The children were playing outside, and the women were gathered in the kitchen discussing Heather's baby. What about the men? We were drinking in the backyard. Steve, I can't believe you had the courage to go on a date. Carol would kill me if I even thought about it. I'm just tired of begging for it, and since I'm not getting it at home anymore, I've decided not to give it up anymore, Sue said. Heather will divorce you, you know that, said her husband with a condescending look. So what? How will this be worse? If you were told that you could never have an intimate with your wife again, would you stay with her or find someone else? And I'm still searching and enjoying every moment. Heather can take half of everything I have, which is basically debt, and I'll probably pay child support, but I'm already doing that, so what's the difference? I just want a caring, non-controlling wife who still likes to have a night, couple of times a week, not once or twice a month. I finished my beer. Okay, wise man, Sue's husband said, coming closer to me. What will you do if it turns out that she really is carrying your child? Well, my friend, I'll make a decision when I get the test results. But if your wife and her good friends hadn't taken her out and had a night with her on the side, I wouldn't have had to worry about it, would I? I came close to him. Since your wife was with Heather on all those nights, I guess I'm not the only cheater on the block. The argument didn't last long. God, I can't leave you alone for a minute without you making an idiot of yourself, Heather said, running out of the kitchen along with the other wives. I was simply defending your honor, Sue's husband said. You're a woman of easy virtue. I replied, if you think that, then his wife is too, because she was with you all those nights. Let's go home. I was looking forward to the taste of Ken's ribs, but apparently that won't happen, I said. We ordered pizza for dinner, and the kids loved it, although Heather was unhappy. The situation with Heather was getting even more tense, if that was even possible. I think my dating every couple of weeks may have contributed to this, but I was finally starting to get good into him. I don't want you to go on dates anymore, Heather said one night while we were in bed. It's humiliating for me, especially when people we know see you. And that's happened before. I thought you said we have an open marriage now and that's okay. I never said that. You said it all. I just said that if you go out and cheat, I will too. But notice that I don't do that. I guess that's your problem, not mine. Steve, look, if you need some intimate release, I'm here for you. And besides, I need a little something myself sometimes. Oh, stop it. Are you really asking me to have a night with you? Maybe we should call the Pope and tell him that I just witnessed a real miracle. You don't have to be so sarcastic. I just said that since we're both here. I'm sure your boyfriend doesn't mind. Steve, I don't have a boyfriend and never have. Say it now, but I have proof, I said, patting her stomach. You're an expletive, you know that. And you, I replied. We found a compromise. It wasn't like a honeymoon, but there was more night than there had been in the last 5 years. Now there was no need to go on dates, and I thought we might even have a chance to try again. The last month had been difficult for all of us. The kids were thrilled to have a new sibling, and Heather was as big as a house. She was just 1 week away from going on maternity leave and would spend the rest of her pregnancy awaiting the birth of her baby. Both of our mothers were thrilled about the new grandson, and I think I was the only one who wasn't completely on board with the idea. Will you be present at the birth? She asked as we were cleaning up after dinner one night. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Well, you were there for the births of all our children, and I wish you were there when our baby was born. I wanted to say your child, but I think we were both tired of the snarky remarks, and she knew what I was thinking anyway. Sure, why not? What else should I do? If he's born black, we can save on the DNA test. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she stumbled into our bedroom. I followed her. Sorry for the snarky remark. It was inappropriate, I said as she cried face down on our bed. I know you're as worried as I am, and if you want, I'll be there. She smiled and said that she would like that. The baby was due in mid-October, but as 3 weeks passed, she began to worry. The doctor wasn't worried and said that the expected date of birth is approximate and not exact. The child himself determines when to be born. Why do babies insist on being born in the middle of the night? My parents got a call at 1:45 a.m. to come over and watch the kids while I bundled Heather into our minivan. Relax, breathe, I said all the way to the hospital. We couldn't say we were experienced because many years had passed, but there were no big surprises. Labor was still terrible. According to my wife, there was never enough medication, and I was sure her fingerprints would be on my forearm for the next year or so. Our girl's scream signaled the end of our struggle. I was tired, but Heather was exhausted. When the baby was placed on her chest, well, she wasn't black, or at least that was obvious after a minute or so. The nurse took the baby away, and my wife was sent to the recovery room. I went out into the corridor and started making phone calls. What did you call her? Mom asked me. For the first time, I realized that in all these months, we had not discussed names. I always called her the child, and Heather referred to her as our child, but we never talked about names. Well, that was another question to solve. With dark hair, a small nose, and a plump face, she looked like almost all the newborns in the maternity ward. How can mothers and grandmothers tell who a baby looks like at this stage? Can I tell if this is my child? No way. When the doctor came up and asked to take a smear, I already knew what it was for. Mixed emotions were what I felt as I waited for Heather to be transferred to the ward. The DNA test could take up to a week, so the child would be home until the test results came back. I had to put my doubts and feelings aside. It's not the newborn's fault, and even if she's not mine, she didn't ask to be born into this chaos. Heather was tired, and the many visitors weren't helping. Around 7 in the evening, I kicked everyone out. My parents would stay with the children one more night, and for the first time, we would be alone with the baby. She's beautiful, isn't she? Said my beaming wife, kissing the baby's forehead. I expected her to say something like, she looks like you, but I think she knew better than to go too far. Your parents brought the new crib they bought and are going to assemble it, and the changing table tomorrow. I'll move the bed to the other wall so we have enough space for everything. We talked for another half hour but did not discuss what was on both of our minds. We have to pick a name pretty soon. They're asking me what to write on the birth certificate, I said, waiting for some guidance. We have plenty of time. I'm just glad she's healthy. I haven't seen you this happy in a long time, Heather said. A little kiss on the lips, and I was gone. I had a lot to do. No matter what might happen in the future, that night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't take my eyes off the children's furniture. I don't know if I was exhausted or just tired, but I was really looking forward to having our girl home with us. The next day, I brought the kids to meet their little sister and told them they had to be extra nice when we brought her home. When they asked what we named her, I said we were still thinking about a name and asked for their suggestions. Most of the names didn't work, but they suggested one that I liked, Brittany. On the 4th day, everyone was already home. Our bedroom was rearranged, a supply of baby food and diapers was ready, and everything was in complete disarray. As I said, everything was fine. We had a good weekend with Brittany. On Monday, I didn't say a word to anyone about the baby. It was a little hectic at work in the morning, but by midday everything had settled down. On the way home, I stopped at Subway and picked up dinner for everyone, looking forward to a quiet evening. Her parents were just about to leave when I approached the house. I unloaded the bag of food onto the kitchen table and went to find my family. I found everyone in our bedroom playing with the baby. I stopped at the door and just watched my kids laugh and my wife play with Brittany's tiny feet. They're so tiny, David said, touching them with his finger. You two were so small once, and look how big you are now. My heart melted looking at the four of them. I quietly returned downstairs and made a louder entrance. "Who's ready for dinner?" I shouted, looking around the corner. The children shouted, running downstairs. "Give me a minute." "I'll put Brittany down and join you," my wife said, smiling at me. Life was pretty good at that moment. Everyone talked at once about everything. After dinner, Heather went upstairs to take care of the baby, and the children and I cleared the table. Since we used paper plates, it was easy, everything went in the trash. A couple of games, and it was time to turn out the lights. A bedtime story, a little prank, a kiss, and a tight hug, and they were already asleep. I didn't think they'd ever calm down, I said as I got ready for bed, watching my wife breastfeed the baby. I brushed my teeth, rinsed my mouth, and returned to the bedroom just as she was putting the baby into bed. "I'm going to miss what we've had the last couple of months," she said. "We're almost back to where we were at the beginning of our marriage." Her face was indifferent. "I would have sworn that you were the father, but I guess I was drunker than I thought that night because I really don't remember it happening." She handed me the official envelope. I started reading it, but it was all legal mumbo-jumbo until I got to the last paragraph, which said there was no chance that I was Brittany's father. "Heather," I started, but she raised her hand to stop me. "I already know what you're going to say, so you don't have to say it." I signed the divorce papers. "They are on your desk in your office. If you find the right buyer for the house, go ahead. I won't stand in your way. Brittany and I are moving in with my parents tomorrow, so you won't have to look at us anymore. My mother will send the children to school in the morning, and you can pick them up after work. I'm so sorry, but I'm glad it's finally over, so at least one of us can move on." With these words, she left the bedroom and went downstairs, probably to the office. I was stunned and in shock. In the back of my mind, I thought it could happen, but thinking about it and seeing it actually happen are two different things. We were happy again. Damn it, why is this happening to me? For God's sake, I sat on the bed and cried like a baby for the next half hour, covering my mouth so as not to wake Brittany. I spent the rest of the night lying on my back in bed, feeling sorry for myself and trying to figure out what to do next. By 5:30, I had no answers except that I couldn't stay here and face Heather. That morning, I felt like a rag that had been wrung out too many times. I took a shower but forgot to shave and brush my teeth. I didn't make coffee, didn't make breakfast for the kids, and didn't pick up the newspaper from the porch. I just left. I needed to get away from here as quickly as possible. On autopilot, I got to work and grabbed myself a cup of coffee. By 9 o'clock, it had already cooled down, and I was still sitting in my chair, in my jacket. There were 3 messages on the phone, but I didn't even hear them. At 10 o'clock, my secretary replaced my iced coffee with fresh coffee and asked if there was something she could do. "No, I don't think anyone can fix it," I said. I woke up and got to work. When I returned home, Heather and the baby were gone. She left a note on the door saying she wanted to keep the kids overnight to talk to them, but I could pick them up tomorrow. The note wasn't even signed. When I went up to our bedroom, I saw that everything was gone, the baby's new furniture, her clothes, and all her personal belongings from the bathroom. I walked into our children's rooms, and they were just as they had left them in the morning, unmade beds and scattered pajamas. I didn't eat on Monday night, and surprisingly, I didn't get drunk, although I probably should have. My brain was overloaded and just hurt. I wanted to feel nothing. I wanted to sleep. I wanted this nightmare to end, but it didn't. On Tuesday, I spoke to the children myself, and despite the tears, we spent the night together. The rest of the week passed in a blur, and the weekend gave me too much time to think, which was the last thing I wanted to do. 3 weeks later, I was tired, exhausted, but still alive. I was right, the children turned out to be resilient. We got into a routine and stuck to it, no matter the cost. As long as I knew what I needed to do, I could function without too much trouble. During the first month, I found a letter with my name on it on the kitchen counter. I knew who it was from, and that's where it remained, unopened. My mother and my mother-in-law became real saviors. They did what I could not. I was gradually returning to reality, piece by piece, but I was still far from who I was a couple of months ago. I had all the answers then. Like I said, It's simple until the what if becomes reality. I had a lot of anger, but when I let it out, it scared my children, so I kept it under control or hit the wall when they weren't looking. My neighbors, with the exception of my next-door neighbor Ken and his wife Pam, stayed away. I was invited to their gatherings, but I never went. One day, I saw Sue and her husband at the mall, and my anger flared as I thought about punching him in the face again. They crossed to the other side of the passage and kept their distance. When everything was clear and agreed upon, 90 days later, I became a bachelor again. Everything was divided equally, including joint custody of the children. I haven't spoken to Heather since that night, and since our parents were busy with the kids, there hasn't been a need to. Our only big problem was that the house wasn't selling. I lowered the price twice, and there were still no buyers. It was probably still overpriced, but I wasn't going to give it away. We really needed the money to pay off our debts. David and Megan were coping. They finally accepted that we were no longer a family, but since they saw their mother and little sister almost every day, this became the norm for them. I was handling school activities and most other things, and sometimes I thought I saw Heather. Things were going well at work, or as well as could be expected in an economic downturn, and I became the person in the office who got noticed because I was the only bachelor there. I went on dates with a few women and got into bed more than once, but the single life wasn't as appealing as I thought it would be, especially with 2 kids at home. Men from the area matched me with friends and, God forbid, with relatives, but nothing came of it. It was too early and too painful, so I usually told them to get lost. The only thing that hasn't changed is the position of that envelope on the counter. A year has passed, and although Heather didn't say anything about herself or the baby, it felt like she was dying to say something. I knew that my mother was also dying to say something, but we had a formal agreement that mentioning Heather and Brittany in my presence would result in death, and they kept their word. I heard everything I needed to know from my 2 children, more than I wanted to know, since they saw their mother and half-sister almost every day at their grandparents' after school. 14 months and 6 days later, Heather's mother suffered a stroke. She almost died, and her days of babysitting were over. I often visited her in the hospital and somehow did not run into Heather there. My mother took on childcare responsibilities, but it was too much for her. We needed to come up with something else. Heather, this is Steve. Do you have a minute to talk? That's how our conversation began. I expressed my condolences for her mother and said that if there was anything I could do to help, just let me know. As you know, Mom has been looking after the kids, but it's not working, and we need to figure something out. Can we meet and talk about this? I didn't know what she was thinking, but I had to literally drag the answer out of her. I think I can come by on Saturday afternoon. How about 2 p.m.? That's fine. I'll even grill something, and we can have dinner here. Steve, not necessarily. It's okay. See you on Saturday. It wasn't as bad as I thought. We had been sharing all expenses since day one, but this was the first real conversation we'd had since that night. I was very pleased with myself. David and Megan didn't see anything special about it. They saw their mother all the time, so what was the point of her coming to dinner? I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves. I dressed casually and made sure the house was clean. I hadn't changed the locks and wasn't sure what the reception would be like. She rang the doorbell and then came in, hearing me yell from the back patio that the door was open. She had lost weight, her hair had grown longer, and she didn't wear much makeup. Unlike before, she wasn't trying to impress me. Apparently, she brought a pie and set it on the kitchen table before asking if I had any diet soda. Everything you want is in the refrigerator, I said, pulling out an umbrella for the picnic table in the backyard. I think we'll have dinner here if that's okay. That sounds good, she said, without emotion in her voice. While the kids were playing video games in the living room, I asked her if she had any ideas on what to do. I thought of a few. Do you have any? Well, I was thinking about babysitting first, she said, walking over to the refrigerator and grabbing a bottle of beer. But since it's only an hour or so in the morning and a couple of hours in the evening, no one would want to work such short hours. And even if they did, we wouldn't be able to afford it. I asked around in the area if anyone knew someone who would like to work as a nanny for a few hours, but again, nothing worked out. I took a long sip from the bottle. If I could change my work hours, it would solve the morning problem, but we still have the after-school issue. I could probably trust the kids to stay home for half an hour, but a few hours is too much. I'm stumped. I have an idea, but you probably won't like it, said Heather, looking me straight in the eyes. Well, it must be better than what I came up with. Don't be so sure until you hear it. Come on, tell me, and we'll discuss everything. You know that Mom needs long-term rehabilitation, and Dad will be busy caring for her. I'm thinking about finding my own place, so I don't disturb them. You have an empty basement, and if we fix it up a little, Brittany and I could move in there, and it would solve all our problems. My brain was still in the you have an empty basement mindset. You don't want to be alone with yourself, Steve. We're still paying off the house, and even though we've cut back on all the frills, we're still tight on money. I could find a place, but with this and childcare, we'd be back to where we were a year and a half ago. My mouth didn't function. She stood up, grabbed another can of soda, and then noticed the envelope on the counter. I didn't try to hide it. I had almost forgotten it existed. It had become such a familiar fixture on my counter. She picked up the envelope, looked to see if it was open, and put it back where it was. Well, think about what I said, and if you have a better idea, let me know. Heather, I'm not sure this will work. I told you wouldn't like it, but until we sell this house, we're both stuck. And it's not like we've ever lived together. She was right about that, but I didn't like the memories of her last day here. Let's have dinner, and we'll talk after. I put 2 racks of ribs on the grill, which were cooking well, and boiled some corn on the stove. She helped prepare the salad, and 30 minutes later, we were all sitting at the table. How are things going at work? I asked, taking a bite of the butter-coated corn. Okay, but I've reduced my hours because my mom is sick. I just want to make sure I don't irritate them and get fired, which is something I can't afford right now. They won't do that. You've been working with them for years. No job is safe in this economy. We fired 3 people right after the new year. Thank God I can do everything in the office, otherwise, I could have been one of them. Well, what about you? Surprisingly, we are doing well. Business is down a bit, but better than last year. I think if we get through this year, we'll be fine. You have no idea how lucky you are. Lucky? Yeah, of course, I thought to myself. One day, I got lucky. I put the food away while Heather loaded the dishes into the dishwasher. David and Megan put everything else in the refrigerator. I cleaned the grill of any residue and seared it with a wire brush. I lowered the umbrella, and that was the end of it. The kids were in the living room, watching TV or playing a game, but Heather was nowhere to be seen. She didn't leave, did she? I thought, looking around the first floor. I found her in the basement, walking around. I can arrange this, she said as I approached her from behind. I think this is a bad idea. Why? She asked, turning and looking me straight in the eye. You know your meetings with people and everything. I think we've done enough for the kids. Don't you think? So what you're trying to say is that you don't want the children to see their mother walking around? Is that what you're trying to say? No, I don't mean that. It's just... Steve, are you dating and bringing someone home? No, I'm not. Let's get up and talk. The first beer went quickly, and I took the second one. She laid out her plan. Since the basement had a separate access to the garage, it could actually work as a mother-in-law apartment. I start work at 9 o'clock, so I can send David and Megan to school. Since I finish at 3:30, they'd only have to be home alone for about 25 minutes. Heather, this looks good on paper, but there are a lot of other issues, not to mention some emotional issues that I might be dealing with. She walked over to the tabletop. Have you never read it? At first, I wanted to tear her into a million pieces and burn every piece in the fireplace. Then, when I calmed down, I didn't want to read how she portrayed me as a demon and how long it lasted. In the end, I think I was afraid it would make me miserable again, and I couldn't go through that again. Believe it or not, I thought that before that night we had a great chance to start over. After we reconnected, within 3 months, we were a family again. If it weren't for that stupid test, we would still be one. So, to answer your question, no, I haven't read it." We both fell silent. "Well, if you ever decide to read it, you'll find it an interesting read. You may not like everything, but I think you owe me that after 10 years of marriage." I didn't owe her anything. "Well, I have to go. Think about what I said. I think it will be beneficial for both of us, and if we make some rules about other things, I think it could work." I told her I'd think about it. She hugged and kissed the kids and kissed me on the cheek before heading back to her parents. I sat in the kitchen, drank 3 more beers, and stroked that stupid envelope. After my 4th beer, around 2:15 in the morning, I tore it open and started reading. She was right about one thing: it was an educational read. I read the 4 pages once, then read them a second time, not fully believing what she wrote. A lot of it was the same sorry crap I'd already heard, but a few points made me both angry and sad. Why she thought I didn't respect her was incomprehensible to me. She said she felt like a piece of meat or some kind of toy that could be used whenever I wanted. When she said it got to the point where she thought it was her marital responsibility or something she had to do from time to time, she knew we had a problem. Sure, I wanted an intimate a lot more than she did, and sometimes I got hurt when I didn't get it, but she was damn wrong on this point. I loved her, and night brought me closer to her. True, we argued about intim, but going from 3 times a week to twice a month and only when she was drunk made me angry. My only thought was that she was tired of intimate with me and didn't give me a chance to fix the situation before she abandoned us and started hooking up. I knew she would bring up our financial problems and how I criticized her spending on clothes, but I thought she was spending too much. I only bought what I really needed, leaving the rest for the children or her. I felt pretty good about this. Then the real content of the letter began. "You have to believe me when I say that I really thought the baby was yours. I never even knew who that man was. I was so mad at you that night when Sue and Pam left me at the table that I just had one drink after another. I remember Sue pouring coffee on me and yelling at me for something I apparently did. I stopped for a minute and thought back to that night, trying to remember how she got home. I knew she had been drinking, but she didn't seem that drunk when I saw her. But that could have happened hours before. I wasn't sure what really happened. I just crossed the line, so to speak. When Sue brought me home, she told me not to say anything and to go to bed. The next morning, you looked at me like I was the last piece of trash. You couldn't have known what happened, but from the look in your eyes, it seemed like you did. After that night, we kept going out. I wanted to show that I was independent, that I didn't need your approval, and I wanted to prove to myself that other men found me attractive. Who was I kidding? The only thing men wanted was a night. They didn't care about my thoughts or my appearance. They were only interested in what they could get that night. We just went to dinner and talked about our husbands, and what we said wasn't very flattering. You noticed that I didn't go out anymore after that night, but I was shocked when you started going out. At first, I thought you were bluffing, but when you left, I got worried. If you thought I was cheating on you, I wasn't sure what you were going to do when you returned home. I was relieved when I saw that you had done nothing. I was planning some fun for the next week, but when you walked out again without saying a word, I knew I was in trouble. Everything went wrong between us after that. That Thursday night when I came home in such a good mood, it wasn't because of what you thought. I had found a huge mistake that one of the lawyers made in an important case, and I was praised for my excellent work. The owner of the company gave me a bonus of $500 right on the spot. I was over the moon when I walked through the door, and before I could say anything, you called me a cheater. I was broken to the core. I hated you for what you said, but I didn't have the strength to stand up to you that night. I remembered that evening, and she was right. I really did attack her with all the accusations before she could even open her mouth. I was angry, but it was also her fault for not saying anything. Would I have listened and believed her? I guess we'll never know now. The last page was about when she found out she was pregnant. Over and over again, she wrote that she thought it was my child. It had to be, as I never slept with anyone else. I destroyed her spirit when I slept with Nancy the first time. She didn't have to ask if I did it, she could feel it on me. She wrote that she almost left me the next morning. Steve, when the first test came back positive, I immediately went to the store and bought 2 more. I couldn't be pregnant. She described the horror of realizing she was indeed pregnant. "Steve is going to kill me," she kept repeating to herself. We were at the lowest point in our marriage, and I had to somehow bring everything back to when we were happy. You had completely given up on me and our marriage. We had terrible fights, but I wasn't going to give up. You should have divorced me, but I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I've been in heaven for the last 3 months. We were experiencing our second and third honeymoons rolled into one. I knew you still had doubts, but every night I did everything I could to make those doubts disappear. You were mine again, or so I thought. Stupidly, when our girl was born, I was the happiest woman on earth. You were with me. We were together again. Brittany looked exactly like you, or at least I thought so. Maybe I just wanted to see it. When I opened that envelope, I knew what it contained. You were the father of our beautiful girl. I cried from 11 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. When my parents finally arrived, they asked me questions I didn't have answers to and told me I could come back to them. Not that they wanted me to, but what choice did they have? You looked so happy that evening. I was going to enjoy my family until the last moment. I loved you so much, and now I have to hurt you. I wanted God to take my life before this happened, but He didn't. There was no need to wait this time. The words on the sheet will not magically change. I didn't care about myself. I only thought about my child, my 2 wonderful children, and the husband I would have to destroy. You didn't scream. I would scream if we switched places. You still loved me. I saw it in your eyes, but I failed you. I left. I couldn't look into those eyes anymore. I died in the office that night. My marriage, my life, is over. David and Megan didn't understand why I couldn't be with them anymore, but I figured you'd explain to them someday. Sue became my only friend, and we both realized it was too late to get to me that night. As it was, the only time I would kill that man and gladly go to the gallows if I could find that man again. Unfortunately, I don't even remember what he looked like. I'm not going to beg for forgiveness or ask you for anything. I lost that right the night I came out angry with you. You said you wanted a loving and caring wife, and I hope you find what you were looking for because you deserve more than what I gave you. I don't want to say goodbye, but I have no other choice. I love you, always will, and wish you all the best. The only thing I ask of you is not to hate me forever. I'm not worth the effort. Signed, your loving wife, Heather. I read it a 3rd time the next morning, this time sober. I woke up the kids and sent them to school, then called into work and took the day off. With a few cups of coffee, I sat down at the computer and wrote a response to Heather, point by point. I didn't do this out of spite, but it was time to set the record straight, at least as I saw it. I didn't put all the blame on her for the destruction of our marriage, but she was the one who finally ended it when our marriage was already on artificial support. I only gave up after I realized that we would never be happy again and that I deserved to be happy. A little under 4 hours and a whole pot of coffee later, I was done. I hit the send button, sat back, and felt pretty good. She probably wouldn't like a lot of what I wrote, but she'd know it was true. My kids and I went to a Chinese buffet, and I ate too much. I should have gotten my money's worth. We had a nice evening, and before going to bed, I checked my email and saw there was no reply. I slept well and woke up refreshed, ready to take on the world. 2 days later, I found Heather at home after getting back from work. The children were already playing outside, and she was waiting for me in the kitchen. I was a little on edge, but when she asked if we could talk, I thought, why not? The voices rose, followed by tears, hugs, and a few kisses. There was some laughter, but none of us thought it was funny. We dined together, and by 11 o'clock, plans were made, agreements reached, and a new chapter of my life began. Heather and Brittany moved into the basement the following week. I prepared 2 rooms so she could have a bedroom and a small living room. It was a risk, but financially it was the best move, and we both knew it. The first week, I felt like I was on caffeine. I was so nervous and irritable. Then it got easier, but it was never the same. When she came one night and lay in my bed, it was wonderful. When it became more common, I thought I was in heaven. But we were just fooling ourselves. It was nothing more than 2 people reaching out to each other for something that was now unattainable. When the intim stopped, we became the same as we were when this nightmare began. The first time Heather went out on a date, it was strange. I watched her leave and heard the last brick hit the ground. The second and third times, I was angry. She was no longer my wife, but it felt just like those nights long ago when she would go out with her friends and leave me behind. I no longer had the right to feel that way, but I was still damn angry. Maybe it would have worked if it weren't for Brittany. She was a wonderful child, but a constant reminder that only brought me pain. When I told Heather she had to leave because it wasn't working, she cried, but at least she didn't beg me to let her stay. I loved her, probably always would, but I wasn't in love with her anymore. It just wasn't in my power anymore. The kids were angry, I expected that. I thought about leaving on my own and renting an apartment for myself, but I abandoned the idea. This was my house, at least until it was sold. I was no longer the victim, I was now the one making decisions and needed to move on. Nancy abandoned me, saying that I was stuck in place and not moving anywhere. My baggage was holding me back from getting what I really wanted in life, and she wasn't going to wait for me to finally figure it out. Heather and I weren't friends, we couldn't be. A friend is someone you trust, who does not lie to you and cares about your interests. Heather didn't fit that description. In retrospect, the house didn't sell, and I took it off the market, at least for a while. I had my 2 children, and they still had a great relationship with their mother. Shortly after this, Heather's mother died, and her father actually gave her the house. He retired and now travels the country or runs from the memories he sees every time he closes his eyes. Heather and I talk, but only sometimes and only about our children. I try never to ask about her love life or Brittany. I'm not doing this out of rudeness, but as they say, it's better not to touch dead dogs. Heather still visits my mom, and my mom always tells her to give me some time and maybe I'll come to my senses, but that will never happen, at least not in my lifetime. But she still hopes. I occasionally date Nancy, but like Heather, it's more about physical satisfaction. She says I'm great in bed but sometimes try too hard, whatever that means. I was angry, then sad, and then numb before I realized that I still had the great American dream deep inside. Victoria was so different from me that it was frightening. She's hot oil, and I'm warm water, but somehow we mingled when we were together. She was a single mother with a little girl who didn't trust anyone, especially men. She was a friend of my neighbor Ken's cousin, whom I met at his party a couple of months ago. Our kids played together, and David played a little too rough for my comfort. "Careful, boy, before someone gets hurt," I shouted, reprimanding him after he pushed his sister. "Your son?" she asked. "Yes, but only when he leads," I quickly replied. "Then he's your wife's son?" "No, still mine and without a wife." She was quite tall, slender, with long black hair and dark eyes that asked questions and warned to keep their distance. She only drank tea that evening and peppered me with questions before leaving with the group she came with. The next week, Pam asked what I thought of her. "She's beautiful but a little aloof," I answered, not giving it much importance. A week later, she and her daughter Karen came again. Since our girls were playing together, we were pushed against each other again. After the 4th time, I asked her out, and I wasn't too surprised when she said yes. It wasn't love at first sight, and it certainly wasn't attraction, at least not for that night or long after. She held all the cards. I didn't know where I stood with her, and since she didn't open up to me, I went on a casual date with another woman. Guess who found out about this? She had a temper. When she burst into my house the following Saturday, demanding to know why I'd cheated on her, I said, "I didn't cheat on you, I just went on a date. You're just like my ex-husband and all the other men. You can't be trusted." That's when all the suppressed anger I had been holding back for months came out. I blew up and told her she didn't know anything about me and that I wasn't going to stand there and be accused of something I didn't do. I was furious and about to turn and walk back into the house. Ken, Pam, and several neighbors were now standing outside, listening to our argument. I decided to take a different approach. "Well, now that we've settled that, do you want to have dinner with me tonight or not?" This caught her off guard, and I wasn't sure if I would get a slap or a kiss. I didn't get either, but we did have dinner that night and every week after that. For months later, after 2 bottles of wine, yes, she drank it, I told her what I was looking for and what I didn't want. With a little liquid courage, I didn't beat around the bush, and she finally opened up for the first time. Did we make love? Maybe. This would have happened if, when I stood up, I hadn't fallen back onto the sun. I think I drank too much. We lay in bed together, talking fully dressed before we fell asleep, or more likely, I just passed out. When I woke up, Victoria wasn't there, and I thought I had ruined everything. When I heard a noise in the kitchen, I found everyone, including her and Karen, at breakfast. Finally, someone got their lazy fifth place out of bed. Doesn't your head hurt? She smiled, trying not to laugh. I needed coffee. I was grateful. I brushed my teeth before going down because she kissed me. This is for last night, she said. But we didn't do anything, did we? I whispered back, no, and that's the point. If I had pushed you or done something stupid, you probably would have already left this morning. For her, it was a matter of respect, trust, and readiness for a long-term relationship. After 7 months, I begged her to move in with me, but she refused. Something about the time not being right. On Friday evening, when she came into my house with bags full of groceries, I was waiting for her. I was on one knee, holding the ring box, tired from waiting. She walked past me, put the bags on the counter, came back, pulled me to my feet, and kissed me. She whispered yes in my ear and put the ring on my finger. Now she lives with me, as her strict mother reminds me at every opportunity, but we both enjoy every moment. The mothers are planning a small, intimate wedding for us as soon as possible. As a family, we all go to church, which is new for my group, but we are a family, and that's what matters. Victoria had only 2 conditions before moving in: 1, a new mattress for our bed, and 2, when we got married, I should adopt Karen. If we're going to be a family, we need to be a real family with no exceptions. There will be no your children, my children, or God forbid, stepchildren. There will be our children. I completely agreed with her. Our kids told Heather, and she said she was happy for us, but I could still see the pain in her eyes. Against my wishes, Victoria invited her to the wedding, but Heather said she wouldn't come. Victoria said she didn't want ghosts in our new life. As I said, she is the hot oil, and I am the water that she warms with. From the very first day we met, I love her madly, and I sincerely believe she is the one I have been waiting for. Without telling her, I took out a loan against my 401k and bought out Heather's share of the house. I wanted this to be our home, only our home. That was important to me. She wasn't happy about what I did, but she understood and loved me more for it. Our life is not ideal, and with her hot temperament, we have more than enough reasons for reconciliation. For a while, I thought my fingers would never straighten out, but we both understand that we are in this for the long haul. Problems are just issues that need to be resolved and not nails in the coffin, as they were before. I'm incredibly happy, although at some point, I thought this would never happen to me again. I think what they say is true: good things come to those who wait. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, the husband was right to confront his wife before she went to the party with her friends. What's your impression? Let me know in the comments. Until next time.